There's a place called Dodges Lodges between.
30 board members, I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first item is our Pledge of Allegiance.
Look it up.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Chair, could you read our mission statement?
The mission of Marshall Public Schools is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda, motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any additions? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Public forum, now's the time the public could approach the board. Does anybody like to approach the board? Moving on to our presentation, e-learning days. Welcome.
We were drawing straws with Dion to see who got to go first, but no one wants to follow the budget presentation.
Right.
So we're here to talk about e-learning days today. Obviously, this winter was an interesting winter with weather, a lot of school days closed because of that weather. And we've talked a lot of internally about these days and how could we make some better use of some of that time. One of the things I want to say ahead of time is we know we can't replace the face-to-face time with the teachers with an e-learning day. We know that that's the most important piece. E-learning is just a way to have continuity when school day is interrupted. So it's a way to continue some of that work that's taking place in the classroom. So that's something we kept in mind throughout the process. So I want to say that as we were going through and putting a plan together to share with you guys, we looked a lot at what other districts are doing. We're not the first district to have e-learning days, so we talked with each of us talking to different groups that we're connected with about what are you doing at your school, what works well in your district, what are some things you would stay away from, and some good advice there from different groups. And then just gathered plans from other districts and used some ideas from other places too to form a plan that we thought would work best for Marshall. So what we're showing you tonight is what we put together from those conversations and the things that we've seen there. So plan development, what we did is we put together a committee of people from different sites, represented all sites and different positions within the district. So we have a number of different things together there. Met a few different times. After we put together a draft plan and had some conversations at the committee level, we shared it out with site leadership teams. So each site had a chance to review at their leadership team level what the plans looked like and have some conversation about what from what we put together as a district-wide, what they'd like to see individually for their sites. And then after those conversations took place, we came back, met again at a committee level, and that was the kind of process to get to what we've got for this evening. And we'll walk through kind of what we're looking tonight with you guys, take questions you have, and then we'll ask you to approve a plan in July after we've had a chance to review this evening. So looking at e-learning days, the state has a set of criteria they've put together for e-learning days. When the snow bid or snow law came through earlier this winter, one of the things they said in there was they strongly encourage districts to have an e-learning plan. So that was another thing that prompted us to want to work on this a bit. Looking at the criteria they have, one of the big things, like I mentioned a little bit ago too, is the learning has to align to work taking place in classrooms, an extension of learning activities. So it's not, we want to make sure it's continuing work that's taking place in the classroom. That's the point of having an e-learning day. So some of the requirements the state has is an e-learning day is for inclement weather. You can't call it just because you decide you want to try something different. You can have up to 5 in any school year, and there's no more than that. It has to work together with a team of teacher representatives. So we had a number of different people on our team, and it has to be approved by the board. We have to accommodate for internet connection for families that don't have internet connection at home. We've had surveys we send out to families and talk about, do you have connection at home and internet connection, with our tech survey and such. And a lot of we get responses back, very positive, 96, 97%, something like that. Families say they have internet connection. Sometimes we we think about cell phones at home that has an internet connection. That's not really the same as using a school device and doing homework. And it's kind of one of those things I think we'll have to go through a day to see where are the gaps really at. But the plan, certainly we've talked about how do we accommodate for families that don't have that connection at home. Accessible instruction for students with special needs or with the 504 plans. We'll talk about that a little bit, what we've looked at. With a plan, after it's approved, we notify parents and students at the beginning of the school year, prior to school year starting, that we're going to run e-learning days. So it's not a surprise when that comes up. And then on an e-learning day, 2-hour notice prior to the normal school start time. So what would happen is when we notify that there's no school that day, would at the same time say, and today will be an e-learning day, be part of that process. The state also says you have to have access to teachers via telephone and online during normal school hours. So we've talked about how do we make that happen so students have access to reach their teachers. We've got some different things we've talked about there we'll walk through. And learning activities aligned to work taking place in the classroom, just that's an important piece of it too that we've certainly taken into consideration. Some parameters that we put for e-learning days. One of the things, just being flexible within the plan, knowing that within our first year, we know that no plan is going to be perfect to start with. So one of the things we put in the plan is when we have an e-learning day, we'd make sure we meet, the committee would come together afterwards and say, okay, what worked well, what didn't work well, what do we need to change? Was it so horrible we never want to do this again, that kind of thing, just that we know that we are going to be flexible throughout, that we make changes as we need to. The plan would be, what we talked about in the committee is we want to make sure that first year we'd have one so we can try it and see what works, what doesn't work. Right now, February 17th on the calendar is Snow Makeup Day. So we said we have the first one, let's use that as, we'll just use the Snow Makeup Day if it comes before February 17th. Then the second time we'd have a day for this next year, we just say that's going to be our first e-learning day for the year. So we have time coming in the year, finalize plans, teachers get things put together, and we know we're ready to go with that. And then immediately following our e-learning day, the committee would meet and talk about what worked and what didn't work. Notification for families would be, just like when we're notifying that there's no school, it would be on the phone calls, the emails, the radio announcements, all those things. It would also say that it'd be an e-learning day as part of that notification. And I mentioned make modifications as we need to. One of the other things we've talked about is making sure staff is prepared for this. So professional development sessions would take place. We've already scheduled some things for this summer, looking at different technology applications that we would use for contacting families and working with kids. Some things we've already been using and a lot of tools we've already been using, but just making sure people are comfortable using those tools if the students are right in front of you too. Things like Microsoft Teams, Microsoft OneNote, Schoology. And then we would use some PLC time this fall for the teacher teams to have a time to work through things and talk about what are we going to assign, what's that going to look like. So there's some similarities from class to class with that as well. So that's our parameters for the day. I'm going to pass it off to Todd.
All right, I'm going to talk about staff availability. We're going to ask that teachers, administrators, and other licensed staff be available by phone and email from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. and from 12:30 to 3 p.m. We say that staff may work from home or be on campus on these days. And we ask that they use one of our e-learning platforms such as Schoology or Teams or Seesaw as a mode to communicate with them as well. One of the things we're looking at is using Google Voice numbers for staff so they can give out that Google Voice number to students and not necessarily have their personal email out there. So. The next slide I have is on student attendance. We're tracking attendance as an instructional day. Attendance needs to be taken. They have 3 days to submit their work. And when they submit their work, that's when it would be counted as an attendance day. So that's how we're going to handle that. Any absences are counted as excused if they didn't turn that in. And a lot of our cases, doing standards-based grading, it won't necessarily affect those grades. So.
And then I'm going to visit a little bit about how this would impact early childhood and Parkside and Westside as well. For early childhood and Parkside, we would like the students to receive an e-learning day activity matrix. And this could be sent home from the teacher to the parent via paper, Blooms, Seesaw, or emailed. It's whatever or however the parents are being communicated prior. And students would complete a portion of the activities as directed, and then would record them on the activity matrix with help from a parent, depending on their age, and then that would be sent back to school with a parent or caregiver signature. And the goal is to provide meaningful activities that reinforce academic and social emotional skills that they have already been taught at school. And then for our West Side students in grades 3 and 4, we're looking at students receiving an e-learning days activity matrix also. And this could be, again, sent home paper via Blooms, or also the students are using next year a new program by Microsoft that's similar to Schoology, and that's called Teams. And there'll be links available to online resources that are shared via the Homeroom Teachers Symbaloo page. And any questions in regards to the activity matrices? Again, we want it to be very current on things that they're already learning, or the concept's already been taught, so that it's things that are relevant, things that are happening in the classroom. Other things that I thought about for early childhood would be recording teachers reading stories, having that available so that they can hear a story at home too.
A lot, just a quick question. A lot of these young kids may be going to daycare centers or daycare homes if on a snow day.
Right.
Is that going to be an issue? Is that going to put a lot of responsibility on the daycare provider to make sure they do this? Or I know this is all new to everybody. So.
Right. You know, it's something that the parent and the caregiver will have to work out. I think in year one, that I can share just my own personal experience. My daycare provider had said, no, I'm not going to help your child with that. That's something the parents are responsible for after work, and after you pick your child up from daycare. Year two, she was more open to, if it's something that we can work on together and it's not too challenging, then she was willing to help out with that. And it's really been more, I'm going to tell you what the assignment is, and you start it, and then if you need help, I'll be available. And it's one of those things that I think year one, we're going to try it, and hopefully with your approval, and each year we'll get better at our craft and how we can make everything more meaningful and work out the circumstances like that.
Getting back to what you're talking about, Matt, they're given 3 days
Yeah, I
to
was just going to
complete the
say that.
assignment.
That's good.
That can be done at home with their parents.
Yep.
That was the idea behind that 3 days. Is to allow
Sure.
time
You could do it in the evening with their parents.
Right.
I'm just concerned about the idea of sending it home on paper, because one of the presentations I've gone to talked about that's difficult because then you have to predict when the next snow day is. And if it's supposed to stay current, I know some schools would send home packets with kids just to do on e-learning days, but they may or may not be relevant to where they're at in the classroom. So I just worry about how you're going to keep track of which students would get the paper and how do they get.
What we talked about with that paper is that'd be for, like, if they know they're working on multiple times 2 or something for this period of time, they'd send that home and say, during that time we have snow days, you kind of know when those might be coming up. They'd have something they could send home. It wouldn't necessarily be everything to come home on paper, but the teacher had something. It could be the email says, hey, I've sent this packet home that's for this unit we're working on, so we want you to work on this. But it wouldn't necessarily be everything at that time. Just trying to cover all things that could be included in that e-learning day when it happens.
A lot of things for parents to keep track of,
Yeah.
you know, in particular for very young kids.
And the other thing with the younger kids is we don't send devices home until 5th grade. So trying to have enough stuff to keep it meaningful when they don't have a school device to work with either. So, yeah.
And it might need to be something where we have, if we are predicting a storm and it's Friday and we kind of think possibly Monday there wouldn't be school, there might be a paper in the folder with, in communication saying, if possibly we were to have an e-learning day on Monday, this is what you would need for that day. But if there's no e-learning day, don't do it.
But
Something.
then they would also have to have access to these other programs. Okay.
Right, correct. Great questions.
Oh, wrong one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it would look like at middle school, high school, and Maytech. So if we had an e-learning day, teachers would post their activities on Schoology or contact students no later than 10 o'clock. The activities for each class are intended to take about 20 minutes, knowing that some kids it's going to take longer and some might not. The goal is to provide meaningful activities that help reduce the impact of lost face-to-face instructional time and allow for the acceleration of the curriculum when kids return to school. We're thinking at this level, some teachers may include flipped classrooms or virtual class sessions. And students will submit the e-learning day activities based on the teacher's instructions. So at this level, all kids have their device. Most teachers are working with Schoology, so everything is posted there anyway. It's nothing new. I mean, you know what I mean, like Schoology is not new for everybody. We know how to navigate that. Preparedness checklists. Jeremy has checklists for each building or grade level. And so I'm just going to kind of show you, like for middle and high school, there are things that teachers will have to do to prepare for an e-learning day, things to do during an e-learning day, and then what would go on after an e-learning day. And we will also use PLC time at each grade level content area to prepare. So probably you're thinking in the fall, we'll work with that during our PLC times. And I think these checklists seem to be really helpful, like just making sure that kids know what our students are going to know what's going to happen if we have an e-learning day. How am I going to distribute assignments to kids who might not have internet? And it also addresses attendance taking, marking kids present when they turn the work in. And again, they have 3 days, so we don't think that should be a problem. And then after an e-learning day, talking to the kids about how it went and anything we can improve upon. So.
All right, and then I have the special education and 504 plans. So part of the reason for the 3-day window is so that if a student needs an extra accommodation or modification or some extended time, or perhaps some additional time with their special education teacher following an e-learning day, that we're able to meet that within the parameters of their IEP to make sure that we're providing those, and they still have enough time to turn in those assignments in a timely fashion. Really what we've talked about with this is we will probably need to add as an agenda item for every IEP meeting, as well as the 504 coordinators in each building add to the 504 agenda, that the team will need to discuss how that student's needs are going to be met on an e-learning day. And so we'll just have a statement that they're going to use where it says Parkside Elementary may participate in a virtual learning day. Susie will have these accommodations, modifications allowed for them in order to meet their special education needs or their 504 accommodations. And then we'll just have to keep in mind those related services through physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language, those types of things, and making sure that we're trying to integrate those in as we've missed services so that the same kids aren't missing services every time we have a snow day. Next steps would be to ask for your approval of this plan at your board meeting in July. The committee then, if it was approved, would continue to meet periodically to troubleshoot various issues that would arise or to make sure that staff members and families are clear as to what the expectations are going to be. There are some summer and fall PD sessions currently planned on the Microsoft Teams and the OneNote to have our teachers on board with that. Communication will have to be provided to staff and families. So as Jeremy shared at the beginning of the presentation, we do have to notify families prior to the school year starting that the school district has adopted this plan. There will be a website set up specifically for e-learning day information. And then, as was already shared, staff will be given time to prepare for e-learning days during their PLC time.
How are we prepping kids?
So with the prepping the kids, one of the things in the checklist Kathy mentioned, it just to make sure that anything that a teacher would give on an e-learning day, they're practicing ahead of time. So we're not giving anything on an e-learning day that we haven't tried with kids or shown exposed kids to before that time. So it's not
they'll
something
know
new
on
until
an
the month.
e-learning day, this is what I need to do.
Right. An example would be, Kathy mentioned the Symbaloo page is something Westside uses quite often. It's a, if you're not familiar with it, it's a website where it's just little links. You just push the button and it's like, here are the sites you need. So making sure the kids know, here, how do I get the Symbaloo page? How do I navigate that page? So they're experienced it before they have to use it on an e-learning day. Yep. And that's one of the things the checklist I'm mentioning, this is attached in your board items. So you've got that and then the FAQ as well. So those things would be passed out to teachers and reminders.
How are we addressing the parents of our non-English speaking children with reference to this and communication?
Yep. That'd be part of the communication piece, is working with the parent-student connectors to communicate that with parents. And then we talked at our committee meeting too, at fall conferences would be a good time because all the teachers see all the parents at that time. So it'd be a good face-to-face time to talk about, in the case of this is what it looked like and here's what to expect. Yep.
In the past, I think there was some talk about having a lab or a room open in the building on an e-learning day. Is there any thought that the committee put into that, or?
We did talk about that a little bit, but we said if we close the building for kids in that day, we didn't know if it was a good idea to say then come in. So we said staff could be in on that day, but we right now that's not something we've got in our plan.
Okay.
It's kind of like the same thing when we close a school. We don't have activities that day either.
Right. Other questions?
What were some of the things not to do that some of the other schools jumped at?
Well, one of the things that somebody said don't do is, I think it was Hutchinson, said that they do e-learning days for their secondary because it's easier for secondary to do e-learning day because you have all these tools, you're sending devices home. They don't do them for elementary, but then they did makeup days for elementary and not for high school. They said it's really messy. They said don't go there. It was the advice I got from them. So
Will be a work in progress. Nothing's as good as one-on-one time with the teacher, but
right.
Jackie, we've had this discussion earlier, but yours is the most technical piece in terms of meeting IEPs. When you talk to colleagues in other districts, were there things they said to avoid?
When I talked to colleagues in other districts, nobody had really given any consideration to special education services and how that was going to look. So we even, part of our internal discussion was really, even on those activity matrices, the regular classroom teacher and the special education teacher need to be coordinated because we certainly wouldn't want our neediest learners to end up with the most work on those days. And so they'd have to
Right.
coordinate to decide who was going to give the assignments and things like that.
That's good.
At the middle school and high school level, I feel like with having the extra 3 days and that time for the accommodations and modifications to occur once they return to the building and have access to the special education teacher, we're going to be okay.
Okay. Thank you.
sounds like you really took the plan and worked out as much as you can. I'm impressed. Any other questions, board?
When you're doing follow-up, the PLCs, and you're having committee meetings to say what's working, what isn't, what do we need to tweak?
Right.
That's important.
Very good, thank you.
So the board won't act on this until July, but just so they know, the recommendation of the committee is?
To approve it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good work.
All right.
Now you got to stay and listen to the budget, you guys.
Just so enthusiastic.
Moving on to our next presentation is our 2019-20 budget. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to presenting tonight.
before we dig into things, I just wanted to review kind of the timeline, what we do with the budget process, being we have some new board members and some of the other board members might have forgotten. Last December, Scott and I met with the Finance Committee to go over some of the budget parameters that helps create an initial budget, preliminary budget that we put together. Some of the parameters include projected student counts in a legislative year, that the education staff funding is yet to be decided. We put together a percentage that we're going to use. Things like special ed projections, LTFM revenue, and expenditures are just a few of the parameters. And then those parameters the board approves in the December regular meeting. Once we have the guidelines put together, we put together the initial preliminary budget. We typically will try to have that done in January or February. Reason we try to have it done a little earlier is that gives time for the board and leadership to decide, are we going to hold steady with our expenditures? Do we have an excess where we can expand some of our expenditures, or deficit where we maybe want to make some cuts? Then February through May, we continue to update the preliminary budget as we get better ideas of where the enrollment might be for next year. Legislature makes their decision. We can put in what the actual percentages are. And then we look at also some of the outgoing incoming staff, what the salaries and benefit changes might be. Also during that time, I meet with the building administrators, technology activity directors, some of our different departments to go over their budgets to put in the preliminary budget. And then in June, that brings us here today, we review what the preliminary budget is, and then later will be a recommendation for you to hopefully approve this preliminary budget. Scott and I have worked together trying to kind of get the next steps of where we'd like to sit as I get a little more comfortable in this position. The revised budget, we're hoping to have done sometime in November. 3 months into the school year, we should have a firmer look at where personnel are, and the audit will be done, so that'll give us an idea where we ended up. And then our final budget we tried to have in March. That gives us a look at the expenditures and revenues end up, and helps us to give an idea of where we want to be for the next year, again, with the if we need to add positions or cut. So student enrollment obviously plays a major role. You guys see this a lot. Scott puts together some nice figures together for us on the current enrollment and also projected out. This is one of the main components in our revenue for our levy and our state and federal funding. I've separated in two sections, past, current. We ended the year with 2,484 students. That's 20 up from last year. And then the second area shows just some projections into the next 3 years. You can see that our enrollment's going to hold steady. Graph is a nice way to look at kind of where we've gone with the roller coaster to begin with, and then we've gone up and kind of held steady at where we're at. Another factor that drives the enrollment numbers either up or down is our open enrollment. Just caution as we look at these numbers, please keep in mind that these numbers are what's reported in our MARS system, which is the Minnesota Automated Reported Student System, and it may be different from the final MDE numbers that are projected. So, but from our MARS system, we're showing a positive 10 of students that enrolled into our school district than the Marshall residents that enrolled outside of Marshall. It's a
Was
positive.
interesting, there were like 9 of those school districts they enrolled out of our virtual.
Yep. So another thing that's part of our strategic planning is to look into this a little further. I believe there's a survey that's going to be going out to try and see why students are open enrolling into other districts. Next few tables we share are pertaining to some of the demographics of our student population and other areas that have an effect on our revenue. Such areas as our free and reduced. Each year we see a gradual increase in our free and reduced population.
This number helps the revenue in areas like compensatory revenue and our title programs. The next chart is just a 3-year glance detailing the number of residents, students eligible for our special education services for each year. And you can see that that has increased in the students identified. And last is another demographic that's important. It's our minority students. As you are aware, our English learner EL population continues to increase. In 2017-2018, reported 412 students that received EL services. And in 2018-2019, it was reported that 434 students are reporting services.
17%.
And you can see the different language, all the different languages that we have. So then we cover a little bit on the staffing and class size that are shown in the packet, our projected enroll numbers. As you know, these guidelines aren't the maximum or minimum guidelines, but they're the targets set by you guys, the board, to assist in seeing that we're staffing correctly. On this slide, we're showing the elementary and middle school projections. And then the high school is a little different. As you know, they have the block system and sections that they adjust. So their student to class, teacher class size is a little higher. And then at the bottom, it shows our special ed guidelines. That's based off of the caseloads and needs. So now we'll jump into the preliminary budget itself. On the next few slides, you're going to see a comparison of the 2018-2019 final budget as compared to the 2019-20 preliminary budget. Starting with our general fund revenue, we are projecting an increase over last year by $769,090. And just kind of going from top to bottom, our levy general fund revenue holds steady, shows just a slight decrease. Our local revenue, the miscellaneous is showing a decrease at the bottom there of the $20,461. 10,000 of that was the Viking grant we received last year, so that wasn't included into this year. Otherwise, the local is showing a slight increase of $10,395. State revenue, 2 major changes, as you're aware of. The general aid increase is $349,701, and special education aid of $376,822. General ed aid increased 2%, passed by the legislature and the governor in spring. And the special ed aid, we use a couple of different approaches to calculate this. I think I've talked about it before. We use 3-year average, and we also use the MDE's revenue projection model to try and get as accurate as possible. And that number also does include the estimated increase that was passed by the legislature this spring to decrease our cross-subsidy cost. And last at the bottom is our federal funds. We're projecting an increase in the federal funds mainly due to our Title I program. Next, we look at the general fund expenditures. Total fund expenditures for 1920 are projected at $30,545,742. That's up $806,080 from last year. This will result in a deficit spending in our general fund by $296,092. Just kind of, if you want to look at it as a positive note, our initial preliminary budget that we had back, I think in March, had us at $340,653. So we're down a little bit. Salaries are going to make up a majority of the increase. As we've said before, school districts are a business in teaching, therefore a majority, over 80% of our expenditures are salary and benefits. There are many factors that cause salary and benefit increases or decreases, negotiations, changes in staff, as well as approved additions. Same would go for benefits, negotiations, change in staff, new benefit enrollment. Also, TRA employer contribution is increasing 0.21% next year. And I just figured it out today. That's about $67,000 alone, the TRA increase. So just to show a visual between the salary and benefits, since this was one of the bigger increases, it's a nice visual to show that we're holding steady. There aren't any really jumps in the salary and benefits each year. And then I added a couple of graphs also for our purchased services and capital expenditures, or supplies and materials, sorry. Just because those are showing decreases, or the purchases are showing an increase and the supplies are showing a decrease. Purchase services are showing a slight increase. And this is consultant fees, fees for special education, outside agencies, leases on lands and buildings, repairs. As you can see in the graph line there, we're holding steady with last year. There's just a slight increase over last year. Supplies is showing a decrease. This is basically due to coding changes. We had some curriculum budgeted to supplies and materials last year, and those will be coded all to capital outlay funds. And then capital expenditures is showing a decrease of $92,000. That might stick out to you a little bit. I didn't provide a graph for this because it fluctuates so much. Part of that is our lease, some of our leases are in our general fund capital expenditures, and we had 3 of our technology leases. The last payment was last year. So you're going to see a decrease in that. We do have another payment coming up, or a new lease coming up this year, but we had some dollars fall off of there, which was a nice decrease for our general fund. Any questions on the general fund itself? Excellent. All right, we'll hop into our food service. Expenditures for 1920, we're projecting $1,820,050. That's up $61,450 from last year. Increase is mainly due to food and milk expenditures as well as our contracted services. I did include again the graph for the 2 biggest increases, the food and milk and the contracted services. Looking at prior years, especially with the contracted services for last year, holding steady with those. Food service revenue, we're projecting $1,827,300. That's an increase of $51,323 over last year. This is mainly due to projected increase in our free and reduced lunch revenue, as well as some student lunch purchases. We're looking at an overall excess in the food service fund of $72.50, which is good. And then the graph shows a comparison between our expenditures and revenues, which each year you can see revenues have held steady over our expenditures. Transportation fund, we're expecting expenditures of $1,733,413. That's an increase of $26,984. This is mainly due to the projected increase in contracted services, which is normal. And then revenue, we're projecting $1,658,372, which is an increase of $24,139. But unfortunately, this does put us in deficit spending for transportation at $75,041. Funding just isn't keeping up with the expenditures in transportation. And you can see over the years, it's kind of held true for transportation. Capital outlay. This fund consists of our capital outlay, which includes, but is not limited to, and I just kind of put some of the things so you can understand what's involved in our capital outlay fund. It's our telecommunication system, computer purchases, furniture, equipment, network, software purchase, leasing vehicles, purchase or leasing computers, and the purchase of textbooks. Capital outlay also includes our long-term facility maintenance, or LTFM. Separated the two so you could kind of see our capital expenditures for next year is projected to decrease over last year by $347,549. Again, this is mainly due to our technology leases, and we had a roof lease that we had our last payment last year. Majority of those leases are put in the capital outlay fund. So it's nice because we've paid off 4 of them, and it looks like now we'll constantly just have 3 technology leases going on, with 1 getting paid off when we add one. So it falls in nicely. Long-term facility maintenance projection is projected to increase $103,942 over last year. That is due to the cost of the projects we have scheduled for 2019-2020. Overall, the expenditures in this fund are expected to decrease $243,607. On the revenue side, LTFM revenue is down $49,649. This is when we did our LTFM bonds to pay for the roofing project. We had shifted, some of the levy revenue then is shifted to debt service, and that helps to pay for the interest in the bonds. We'll have a debt service interest payment in 2019-2020, and that $49,000 helps to pay for that in their debt service. Capital revenue, on the other hand, is projected to increase $17,838. After all is said and done, we are projecting our total capital outlay funds to have an excess in 2019-2020 of $113,341. The graphs below just separate the capital and the LTFM so you can kind of see the big jump from last year. Again, the capital in the black was the leases that we paid off. So next year it's holding a little better expenditures to revenue. And then our LTFM revenue right now at least is holding over our expenditures. Community services. Expenditures are projected at $2,286,003. This would be a $50,074 increase over last year. Just kind of breaking down, a majority of that is just in projected adult basic education expenditures. Community services fund revenue, we're projecting at $2,304,253, which is a decrease of $39,592. This is due to a couple of grants that ABE had. They had a Bremer grant of $30,000, and then they had a PIC grant of $4,346, sorry. I would say by the time we do the revised, you'll probably see that, or the final, you'll see a couple other grants. SIA's done a really nice job with ABE in going out and getting grants. So even with that, the overall, we are projecting community services fund with an excess of $18,250. Debt service expenditures are projected to increase $599,885 over last year. This is mainly due to the interest payment for the LTFM roofing bond and the interest for the referendum bond that passed. Those interest payments will be due in 2019-2020. Debt service revenue is projected to increase $379,574. This is mainly due to the levy debt excess that we kept in our payable 2019. That was to assist with the referendum interest payment if the referendum passed. Debt service projection will still have an excess of in 2019-2020 of $82,245. And then the last slide is just a recap showing the ending fund balance or the 2018-2019 end fund balance, and then in the blue is where we want to mainly focus on is our preliminary budget projection for next year. Just a quick recap, general fund, we're looking at deficit spending of $296,092. Food service, in excess of $7,250. Transportation, deficit spending 75,041. Community service having excess of 18,250. Capital outlay having excess of 113,341. And debt service fund having excess of 82,245. Looking down at the bottom, projected ending balance percentage, if all holds true, and that wouldn't be just for our preliminary budget, but our final budget for 2018, 2019, the general fund balance would go down 1.46% to a 17.01 fund balance, and that's definitely preliminary because we still have the 18, 19 to finalize. That's all I have. Any questions?
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Dion, one quick question, I
Yeah.
guess. Do you have any concerns on the transportation budget at all? I mean, with that $75,000 deficit, I mean, is there any thought on that, of anything that we need to watch going forward?
Well, and all in all, the transportation and the general fund, when we submit it to the state combined, we used to actually have, when it was an excess in transportation, that would help out the general fund. Right now, no. I mean, basically, the revenue's not keeping up with the expenditure side of things. We have to keep an eye on it because of the fund balance, but if that were to go into a negative, the general fund would help.
Very good. Board members, any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Dion.
Moving on to our consent agenda, do we have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Yeah.
Is approved. Moving on to our financials, approval of the bills for May and June. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Open. Any other questions for that? Hearing none, please vote. Is approved. And the information for financials on the treasurer's report, anybody have any other questions? No. You must have been pretty thorough. Board forum, board members, anybody want to bring up anything? Moving on to our administrator's report.
I'll just go ahead and summarize a few things from each of the reports that were submitted. From my report, we actually ended the school year with 2,466 students in kindergarten through 12th grade. If you kind of average those out throughout the year, because every month was different, I would estimate that we will be funded for probably in the vicinity of 2,475 students this year, so more than we ended the year with. Excuse me, this will mark our 9th consecutive year that enrollment has increased. An update, and many of you have been involved in this, but facilities planning relative to the referendum is happening. There are committees that have met and actually will continue to meet this week and over probably the next 3 months to do a lot of the conceptual diving into those different aspects of specifically the new elementary and the early childhood space at Parkside, and then the school safety grant project work. I'd say it's kind of in the drawing and getting ready for work to start happening later this summer. Deanne, is that fair to say? In Darcy's report, she gave updates on a variety of end-of-the-year activities. In Brian's report, he shared that the high school on their site continuous improvement plan attained 97% of their goals, and he also shared that on May 21st at the Pride in the Tiger Foundation senior banquet, I believe there were 155 scholarships awarded for almost $156,000. So obviously, we want to continue to be thankful for the hard work that the Pride in the Tiger Foundation does, not just through the banquet, but in other ways as well. In Bruce's report, he had a nice breakdown of some of the successes of our co- and extracurricular programs this year. I believe our teams had 6 Big South Conference championships. We had at least 6, maybe 7 teams who qualified for the state tournament, several individuals who advanced to the state tournament, and many other groups and individuals with success at the local, section, state, and even national levels. So a successful year for our co- and extracurricular programs. Bruce also shared, and I'd encourage you to mark your calendars for Saturday, October 5th, which will be the M Club Tiger Athletic Hall of Fame banquet. More details will be forthcoming. Jackie was just here, but in her report, she shared some information about special education evaluations, and really what we're looking for there is, I would say, efficiency and effectiveness, meaning if we have 100 referrals that come to our evaluation team, we would like a high percent of those referrals to actually result in the students qualifying for services. That means that our referral process is doing what it's supposed to be doing, and there was some data in there that I thought was pretty positive. So, Dion.
Just a quick touch on the Association of School Business Officials informed us that Marshall Public Schools was awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Finance Reporting. Just a special thank you to our district office and their commitment. And then it's not in my report, but it's kind of cool. Had a meeting with Ellers the other day and wasn't aware that Jim High's son, 2011 Marshall Public School graduate, works for Ellers and will be involved in part of our bond sale. So it's kind of cool.
Thank you. Moving on to our discussion items. Moving our board meeting from July 15th.
So this is informational, but you certainly can take action if you'd like. The July 15th school board meeting is at 5:30. That is the same day as the Pride in the Tiger Foundation golf tournament, which oftentimes lasts until probably 6 o'clock. And then there's dinner afterwards. I don't know how many of you are planning to either work at or play golf in, be at the Pride in the Tiger Foundation golf tournament. But if you wanted, we could, I believe, leave the board meeting on July 15th at the same date and time, move it to the morning if you wanted, move it to a later time in the day, or move it to a different day. So if you're going to move it, you would need to do that today at this board meeting, because there will not be any more school board meetings prior to the golf tournament. So,
Board members, do we have any suggestions for a motion? Would you rather do it on Tuesday, or would you rather do it in the morning on Monday? Anybody have any thoughts?
Either would work for me.
I wouldn't be able to do it in the morning.
So I'll make a motion to move it same time on Tuesday, the 18th. Do we have a second? 16th.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on moving the meeting? 5:30, yes. Hearing no discussion, please vote. Bill, you might have to help her there.
Me?
It should be changed.
Good
on
luck
your-
with
Go
that.
ahead, Jeff, cover it.
So I'll call a vote, please.
I will not be at the July meeting.
The motion is approved, the meeting is moved. Approval of the 2019-20 preliminary budget. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the budget? Hearing none, please vote. Is approved. Consideration of the resolution awarding sale of bonds and establishing parameters for acceptance of proposals. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion?
It's just a resolution award, like it says, award the sale of the bonds. Parameters for acceptance would allow either myself or Scott and the chair to award the proposal, since it's not happening on a board meeting.
Does it need two people?
Either myself or you and Scott.
So it takes both of us to do your,
That's
I was kind of wondering too.
Finally, somebody noticed.
all right, we can vote on that, please. It is approved. Approval to enter into lease purchase agreement with U.S. Bank Corp.
So moved.
I'll second. It's open for discussion.
We sent out an RFP. This is for the technology equipment lease for 2019, 2020. We had 7 companies we sent it out to, and we got a pretty good interest rate, I believe, from U.S. Bancorp.
Are these for 3 years?
Yes.
3 year, and they just keep, we'll just keep turning them over and buying new computers, right?
Yep.
It's a good plan. Any other questions? Not, please vote. Is approved. Authorization to increase hours for the summer nurse position. Motion to approve. Every second.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
This is just a recommendation to increase the nurse, have a nurse during our early extended school year program over the summer. This would cover both one nurse at Parkside would also cover the high school. Expenditures would be approximately $1,300. We've had a nurse in the past 15 to 25 hours. This would just cover the whole program.
Good, and I'll call for a vote, please. And I am frozen. There we go, something's not working. Ooh. Trish, I didn't do it. Did it all by itself. Is that because of my comment? Did you kick me off because of that comment? Here we go, 17. It just froze up. Okay. Maybe if I have to shut it down and open it back up. Rich is working.
Mhm.
I get one more computer from Bancorp.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, let's see what we got here. All right, thank you. I think we were on,
Nurse.
let me just do a voice roll. We'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of the student school board representatives for 2019 and 20. I think we have 3. All have interviewed very well. I'll make a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? I think all 3 are juniors. So we have some continuity. That'd be great. So any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote by saying aye for yes. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of the QComp annual report. Motion to approve it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Open for discussion.
This is a report that you've seen probably for as many years as we've had QComp in our district, just a required update that we need to provide to the MD, answering some template-like questions, but it does need your approval.
Very good. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the superintendent's incentive compensation for 2018-19. Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's open for discussion. Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those abstained say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say aye. Motion carries. Next item is approval of the 2019-2020 literacy plan. Do we have a motion?
So move.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Again, a plan that we are required to submit to the state, just sort of indicating, among other things, how we're working to get all students to read well by 3rd grade.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
I just have one question, and I should have brought it up earlier. With the bond issue with the building, Scott, I think you talked about the last time, road access, putting in a new road in the back.
That's been discussed, Bill.
Are you working with the city on that?
Yeah, we'll continue to have discussions, yeah.
Does it look pretty positive?
I can't say positive or not. Those costs are not included as part of the referendum. So, I don't know, Dion?
We did a traffic study at the end of the year, and we haven't gotten the results back yet, but we've talked to the city about the different options, and once we get some of those surveys back. we'll look at that.
Very good. Meeting is adjourned.